Hey, everyone. Most welcome to today's conversation. Oh, Council, you're already here. Wow, fantastic. Let me first accept Council's request here. Okay, great. Council, how are you doing?
Thank you. How have you been?
Doing well, doing well. We're trying the usual. Kampala is a bit hot now. It's taken some days without raining, so we had gotten used to the rains, but now we back to the Kasana, so it's a bit hectic, but yeah, we're surviving. Uh, can you hear me well? I seem not to get you well.
No, Fred, I can hear you. I can hear you very well.
Okay, fantastic. Just give me 1 minute. I need to make a post that we are live now.
All right.
As more people join us, just in a minute.
Okay.
Okay, fantastic. I am done sharing. Ladies and gentlemen, you're most welcome. Doreen, how are you doing, Doreen? I see we already have someone from Amity. Most welcome to this episode. So, Council Alan, Godi, most welcome, Godi. So, ladies and gentlemen, just the same house rules we've always had. We will have Council Alan speaking to us. There are questions that have been sent to me by some people who I'm sure maybe will listen to this conversation after it has been recorded or will join us during the live session. So I'll be asking those questions. But if you're joining us, today is an open session. So please, hey, hi, Anthony. Most welcome. Nice to see you, Anthony, here. Yes, so today we have an open session. If you have any land matter questions that you will want some answers to, Council Alan is here. And probably maybe we could also have some other people who join us along the way as we go into the conversation. But today is an open question and answer session. So if you have your questions there, you can simply do two things. You can DM me the question, or you can actually go down right ahead and check out the comment section on your screen on the right hand side. Please click it and put your question there in the comments. We'll be able to read it as we go along. Now, I also want us to take a moment of silence, for we lost one of the most important, and I say most important because they were some of the first people who really helped a lot of people in understanding law and all those other things. Council Alan, before we take a moment of silence, just briefly, maybe in a minute or two, just talk to us about Barista and, a bit of his life, and then we'll observe a moment of silence for him before we kickstart this show.
Thank you, Fred. It's a somber mood at the farm and amongst our colleagues in Imbara. We lost our partner, a senior partner at Katembe and Company Advocates, who was the founding member of this law firm, having started the law firm in 1979. It was the oldest firm in Imbara, and he was really one of those oldest lawyers in Uganda. I think was number 2 or number 3. So He died Thursday last week, Thursday evening, and we buried him yesterday in Rubindi at his home. But he's a man who was really very honest, timekeeper, and a man who had seen it, who had lived all his life, a man who left surveying, left judiciary to join private practice. So he was a surveyor before, then went to study law in London, came back, practiced as a judicial officer in Uganda up to a very high ranking office of the chief magistrate in the early 1970s before he resigned to come and join private practice in Mbarara. He was also former district chairperson for Mbarara district, the then big Mbarara district. And he served in the Ankole government of the Omugabe. So that was Senior Counsel, Mr. Hilary Katembeko. May his soul rest in peace.
All right, so we'll just observe a moment of silence in respect for Barrister, and may his soul rest in peace. Amen. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're back to our show. Let's kickstart this with a very interesting question. So, Council, last week we had a very interesting episode where people were asking very, very important questions on land matters. Tonight, I still have a series of questions that have been sent in. Surprisingly, some of these questions have been sent in by Ugandans who are outside Uganda, and most probably, maybe they'll be listening into this show after the recording, or maybe they'll catch us as we go along, because some of them I don't see them on the call right now. But yes, so, Council, last week we had some good series of questions where we talked about a number of things. We talked about how to pay land, and you advised us that it is not actually important to pay land in one installment. We talked about the proper process to have the money, and how you can process to buy land and make sure your money is secure. We also dealt with how should one be able to deal with brokers. And of course, we also had someone asking about the cash, whether it is better. And we had several questions, how to terminate a lease, and so many other things. So tonight, we have some of those people, I think, whose questions had not been answered, or they joined the call as we're ending. And one of the first questions that came in today, early in the day, was, please help me differentiate the different land tenure systems in Uganda. This is being asked by someone called Margaret from Johannesburg.
Thank you very much, Fred, and our very good listener from Johannesburg, Margaret. To begin with, when we talk about the land tenure systems, I will not go into defining the history, how they came from the UK and were imported into Uganda, but I'll straight away go to what the Ugandan law provides. I assume by the time somebody talks about them, at least they have an idea of what they are. Now, for those of you who do not know what land tenure system is, you can simply take it as any form in which people can own land in Uganda. And when we talk about people, we mean the individual human being, me or Fred or anybody else tuned in. Then two, a corporate entity like Amity. And then three, a foreigner or somebody who is a non-Ugandan. How can all these people own land in Uganda? When you look at chapter 15 of our constitution, I think it is article 237, land therein is deemed to belong to the citizens of Uganda. Now that is key because the 1995 constitution comes into play when we are recovering from the post-Amin era, which had decreed all land to belong to government. And in accordance with the new constitution, that is the one enacted in 1995, the land vests in Ugandans in accordance with those tenure systems that are only provided for in the Constitution. There are only four. The four are customary land tenure, freehold land tenure, milo land tenure, and then leasehold tenure. The Constitution does not make definition of what these are and the composition and all that, but at the enactment of that Constitution, there was provision that the Parliament, upon their first sittings, will enact laws to regulate the relationship between the landowners and then the citizens, and then, of course, the lawful and bona fide occupants, all those people. We'll talk about them later. But in that line, that is how we're able to have the Land Act. The Land Act is a statute that commenced on 2nd of July 1998. And herein, it makes full definition of what we call the tenure systems. It begins by defining these tenure systems and then providing what they amount to. For example, when you look at that Land Act of 1998, of course, it has seen several amendments with respect to various other sections and provisions. But for today and for purposes of the question, we shall be interested in defining and understanding these tenure systems. So, the first one is the customary land tenure. This is defined to mean a system of land tenure that is regulated by customary rules, which are limited in their operation to a particular description or class of persons in the incidents which are described in the section. Now, that is the general definition of customary land tenure. But when you go further under section 3, I think, of the Land Act of 1998, it further provides the the forms of tenure that are the rather how land can be owned customary such that you qualify to be a customary landowner. And first of all, it speaks of being applicable to a specific area of land and a specific description or class of persons. Then it is governed generally by rules that are accepted as binding and authoritative by that class of persons that we've talked about above. And then it is applicable to any persons acquiring land in that area in accordance with those rules. Then it is also characterized by local customary regulation. And then when applying local customary regulation and the management to individual and the household ownership, the use and occupation of transaction in the land must be also be catered for in this customary land tenure system. Then that tenure system, unlike the others, makes provision for communal ownership and use of land. This is a key and distinguishing factors. Many people talk of, hey, that is a customary land, we're doing this, but the land they are calling customary land, you find that the brothers and sisters each has an individual portion and is no communal ownership. That way, that may not be able to be regarded as customary land. So if it is ancestral land, it is not per se, or rather as a must, that it will be customary land. Then the other characteristics of the customary tenure system include that the land, if divided into parcels, may be recognized as subdivisions belonging to a person, a family, or traditional institution. So, if it is parceled out land, then it is still not going to be enough to say it is for an individual. An institution can own it, a clan can own it, all that is made provision for in the customary land. But the other key aspect of this customary land is that whoever owns this land owns it in perpetuity. That means your children, your grandchildren, and great grandchildren can still come to this and be able to enjoy that land even when you are gone. So that is the detailed characteristics and definition of the customary land tenure system that we have in Uganda. The second one we can talk about is the freehold land tenure system. This simply means the holding of registered land. Key word, registered land. Registered land. Registered land. That is the keyword that you need to take away from this definition. And this registered land is owned in perpetuity, subject to statutory and common law qualifications. Of course, those are the laws that govern the land. And then the characteristics still are provided for under Section 3, 2, I think, of the Land Act. And in here, for this tenure, for it, it involves holding of registered land in perpetuity. That is for a period less than perpetuity, which may be fixed by a condition. Now, unless you own this land in perpetuity, it is not going to be known as freehold. Then the other characteristic is that it must enable the holder to exercise, subject to the law, full powers of ownership of land, including, but of course not limited to, using and developing of the land for any lawful purposes, taking and using any of the land, and all produce from the land, and of course entering into any transaction in connection with the land, including the selling, the leasing, the mortgaging, the pledging, the subdividing, all those that you can do with land. Here, freehold is limitless. That's all I can say. You can deal with your land in any way you deem fit that needs to be dealt with. Why we say that it is freehold and can be subject to conditions is that when you're dealing with freehold, a title may be created which is subject to conditions, restrictions, or any limitations. But these may be positive or negative in their application, and they're applicable to any of the other incidents of tenure. So you find that on a freehold title, you can create a mortgage, have a lease, and all that. So basically, that is freehold. It is the best, I would say. It is the best form of owning land because here this can be by an individual and this cannot be restricted by any other conditions of maybe time or all that. You own your land in perpetuity. Now, the other tenure system is what we call, okay, I'll go to the Milo land tenure. The Milo land tenure is a unique one. It is a unique in that it is.
Indeed, Council, when you're talking about that tenure, I really, really, because there are some people actually, after all the shows that we've been doing, I don't know how I've been forgetting to mention it. The word mile tenure system still confuses a lot of people. And I'm so sure that most of the people on this call will actually want tonight to differentiate that from maybe the freehold or anything because it's widely talked about, but the least understood by the communities out there. Council, please go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was muted, but thank you, Fred. Basically, if you've been following Ugandan history or read about it in bits, you are aware of what we call the 1900 Uganda Agreement. Some people call it Buganda Agreement, but in some writings it has been called the Uganda Agreement because we know to the colonialists there was a thin line between Buganda and Uganda, all that confusion. So when we talk of Milo tenure, we mean holding of registered land in perpetuity. That's the first keyword. But also, this land must have roots in the allotment of land pursuant to the 1900 Uganda Agreement. Of course, even if you inherited land from that 1900 Uganda Agreement, you have to keep in mind that this your land that you inherited is subject to the subsequent laws that were later enacted. And this is where now we find the most interesting and I would say the biggest part that has complicated land ownership in Uganda, the bona fide occupants. These are usually found on this tenure system, and it makes recognition of them. But briefly, when we talk about the Milo tenure, we say that it is we've said it derives its legality from the 1900 Uganda Agreement, but of course that is also recognized under the Constitution, and it is now a full tenure system. It permits the separation of ownership of land from the ownership of developments on land made by a lawful or bona fide occupant. Now, unlike in freehold and maybe elsewhere, it must be specifically provided for by agreement that if I own a building on this land, it is mine. But the notion here in a Milo land tenure is that once there's somebody who has been sitting on this land, of course, now that is going to the definition of lawful and bona fide occupant. Here we are talking about 12 years before the coming into force of the 1995 Constitution. If by 1995, 12 years ago, you were on this land, you made developments on it, sorry, that is when you're going to qualify to be a bona fide occupant. Now, most people, of course, today think 12 years begin counting from the time you joined the land. Unfortunately, not. This law came to cure the anomalies that came from the Usulu and the individual laws and all that. Because originally the Kabakas and kings in Uganda had been collecting loyalties from this land, from the people. Whoever lived on the land, it was believed to belong to the Kabaka or the king. So they would bring food and all that. That is how now we come up with Busulu and individual laws. And then later we are talking about things like ground rent, all that. So the key feature here you have to note is that this enables the holder, subject, of course, to all the laws that are existing in the country, to sorry,
Okay, all right. Answer, are you back?
yes, Fred, I'm back.
Okay,
I was
cool,
saying
cool. Let's go.
that this Milo land tenure is commonest in Buganda, that is the central region. Okay, central region is bigger than Buganda, but where Buganda Kingdom is today, that is where this Milo land tenure is commonest. Of course, there are other parts in Ankole, very few parts, small blocks you'll find that there are lands on which they recognize these other kinds of interests of the bona fide occupant and the lawful occupants. Of course, when we talk about Buganda, you have to talk about Kochi also, because there was also Milo land tenure in that place. Then the other places, some of these things have already been overtaken by the laws and practices and customs, and we have had a lot of other conversions where they have dealt away with this system. But in Buganda, it is also the commonest problem and the cause of majority of the land issues that we currently have in Kampala. I will say Kampala, Wakiso, Mukono, all those regions that are infested by land grabbers. This is where you're going to interface with the challenges of absentee landlords. Absentee landlords, majority of them are on this mile system of land. Okay, I think I have had a detailed discussion of all this, except one more last one, which I think we can also tackle before we go to the next question. It is called the leasehold land tenure system. The leasehold land tenure system simply means the holding of land for a given period from a specified date of commencement. Now, this is key because the lease is an agreement between the lessor and the lessee. When you talk about the lessor, you mean somebody who has capacity to lease out land or to allow you to live on their land for a specific period of time. And when we talk about leasehold tenure, the most important thing is the commencement date of the lease, and then the terms and conditions that may be agreed upon by the two parties, that is the lessor and the lessee. And this is that the interesting part is that this is a tenure system which allows foreigners to own land. In all the others you have seen, no foreigner is allowed to own land as freehold, as customary land, or as milo land. But the only tenure system that allows foreigners to own land is this leasehold system. So for it, it can be created on any of all those other tenure systems, but predominantly on the freehold tenure system. The other key distinguishing feature that you need to note with these tenure systems is that the principle in land ownership and management is that quid planto, solo solo sodit. That is a Latin maxim that means whoever owns land owns everything on it, underneath it, and above it. They are very interesting cases for those of you who have gone into the study of land law and rights that have urged out these principles. But in Uganda, that is the law and that is the principle. The exceptions are where a statute has provided something not to belong to that land. The commonest thing here are the minerals and then the natural resources. You have had the, I think there's also the traditional, there's an act that protects the traditional sites and heritage sites, all those. Those are the only exceptions, but those exceptions must be provided for by law. That is how you're going to find when they discover gold in your area, the gold belongs to the government, but not to you as the individual. When they discover oil, the oil belongs to the government, not to you as an individual. However, the most interesting bit that comes into play under the 1995 Constitution is that if this is discovered in your land and it was never gazetted as maybe public land or wetland or what or something, then government is entitled, rather you are entitled to adequate compensation from the government for use of your land. Adequate compensation are the words in the law, not any compensation, meaning if you do not agree with that compensation, you are allowed to go and do adjudication over it, litigate over it until you get what you think is adequate for you, or until a court or a tribunal set by law determines what is actually adequate for you. With those, I know there are going to be so many follow-up questions on that, but I'll stop at that for that particular question. We can move on, I think, to the next question. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you very much. I hope everyone got that really, really properly. Ladies and gentlemen, this conversation is powered by Amity Realtors, a real estate agency in Western Uganda. They are your number one source of agricultural land, commercial land, prime plots, and even residential plots. We do have some of the team members from Amity right on this call, but when you look into the attendees today, you will see their social media account. Please do go ahead, follow them, and do go ahead and take opportunity of the offers they have on the market. So, Council, there is another question that came in from Jim. Jim is a resident of Masaka, and he says, my father used to own land in Masaka, and after his death, the land was taken by the district. How can I be able to claim our land, and where can I start from? Council, you muted?
Thank you, Fred and Jim, for the question. I am happy that it comes after me explaining this brief history of the land tenure system and the land belonging to the people. Now, first of all, you raise an issue of deceased father. If we are talking about a deceased person who owned land, if you are to derive benefit or continue deriving own in perpetuity what the deceased used to own, The first idea we have always advised is that you need to obtain what we call letters of administration or legally take over the management of the estate of this person. Now, if you don't have an administrator or an executor appointed for this estate, we shall advise you to open up a file either at the office of the administrator general. If your father left a will appointing executors, then they are going to go to court and obtain what we call letters of probate. Once we have done that, now whoever owns or legally has that power to administer the estate of your late father, whether you or any other relative or widow, they are going now to begin on the process of gathering evidence. First of all, what evidence do we have to prove that this your late father owned this land? Did he have a purchase agreement? If he didn't have a purchase agreement, do we have evidence that they actually lived on and developed this particular land? Can we call witnesses to this? Such that when we go to court, even if we cannot find a land purchase agreement, could be predated in the 1970s or 60s or even 30s, and you never had such opportunity to probably preserve such an important document. But if you have eyewitnesses who can come to court and testify and say he owned this land, then secondly, do we know the boundaries of this land? Because when you're saying my father owned this piece of land, you must be certain and tell us what exact piece of land are you talking about? How big was it? What were the boundaries? Were they natural boundaries? Who are the neighbors then? And all that. But all that leads to evidence of ownership of this piece of land. Now, you say the district took over this land. The first question is, when was this? When did the district take over this land? Was it at the time your father was still living or before? Because if it was at the time your father was still living, another question is going to come into play. We are going to wonder whether there was no doctrine of acquiescence. Because the doctrine of acquiescence means if you, Fred or Tim, has allowed me and Alan to come onto your land and stay on your land unchallenged for the life you have been on earth. When you die, no one is supposed to chase me away from this land because you, the owner, you acquiesced to my being on the land, treated me as somebody in equal right. I probably owned some developments on the land. I put my banana plantation, coffee plantations, and you never challenged me. So the doctrine states that you are estopped. You cannot now come back and claim, or anybody claiming a right under you cannot say, look, this person came onto this land illegally. So if your late father was alive, by the time this district came onto the land, did the developments and everything, it is going to be very hard for you, probably a son or a grandchild, to come and claim and say, look, the district took over our father's land. And then the other thing you might find that your father actually gave land to this district. Because if you go to court and you're challenging the district owning this land, and the district says, no, we have a writing by your late father giving us this land. So, as you're gathering your evidence, make sure and ensure that none of these exist. Make sure your father never acquiesced. If at least the district took over the land during the life of your father, do we have any proof that your father ever complained to any authority or challenged the takeover by the district? Then the other question you're going to ask yourself, when the district took over, was it an act or by an act of law? Was it as a result of an establishment of the law? The example we have always given is that the land decrees that were made by Amin transferred all land to government, and whoever owned land was given a lease automatically. So you couldn't own land. So you might find that there's probably an act of parliament or an instrument that said this land belongs to government. And then the other thing you have to note is that, are we sure that by the time your father occupied this land was not actually the illegal occupant? All those are questions that you will have to analyze in detail. But once you have gotten that, then you are going to write to this district local government, engage them, give them what you call a notice, either notice of intention to sue or even just an engagement letter and tell these people, please, I am here to engage you. You got on this land illegally. Tell me how you got onto this land. Otherwise, me, I am going to court. I have my evidence. I am sure that. So once you have written that letter to the district local government, you'll address it to the chief administrative officer because he's the accounting officer of the district, and then you can copy in any other responsible officers. Once the cow receives this letter, of course, it is going to be discussed probably in the council. If there's need, if there's no need, then the cow will automatically seek the opinion of the Solicitor General because he's the chief advisor of government. He will write to the Solicitor General or the Attorney General, and they will advise. Solicitor General advises, then Attorney General defends government. So, in most cases, local governments use the office of the Attorney General to defend them, but they are independent entities and they can be sued independently. So, when you're writing this notice, do not address it to the Attorney General. Please have it addressed to the office of the cow of that respective district. Now, if this officer or the district is interested in a mediation or a settlement, you can reach an amicable settlement, and I advise you to do so. If the district says, okay, we took over your land for the time we've been here, we are willing to compensate you this amount of money. This is most unlikely, but in some cases, it comes up and it will help you so much in reducing the costs of litigation. Where amicable settlements fail, then you will be free to file a suit to claim your land. When filing a suit to claim your land, make sure you are non-statute barred. Make sure your cause of action or your case you are filing in court is not prohibited by any law. Because if you have taken some good time without filing a case in court, you sat on your rights, there are time limitations that we shall be discussing maybe at a later stage that may affect you. But for purposes of tonight and the question, I think that would be just unfair for me to simply stop there in answering you who lost your dead father and government or the local government district took over your father's land. Just to give you the pointers, get letters of administration, gather your evidence, engage the local government. If they are adamant, please sue. Thank you very much, Fred.
Fantastic. I hope Jim did get that. And I'm maybe quite sure, Jim, I would request you that if you could share your contact details, probably I would send them to council, or maybe you would actually get council's contact so you can get proper guidance on that journey. So, council, there is another question here, and it comes in from Joan. Joan is a resident in Canada. She says, what's the proper way of securing a land title when abroad? So I think Joan really wants maybe to own land back home, and she wants some advice on the proper channel to take so she can get her titles.
Thank you very much, Fred and Joan. Thank you, Joan, for listening in and following events that happen home. And also thank you for, even when you're in Canada, for at least still hoping to invest in Uganda. It gives us a lot of hope that Uganda can be better, especially for us who are doing business in Uganda. Now, first things first, the process of acquisition of a land title, we have discussed it before. It really needs a lot of vigor and a lot of vibrancy, but also it must be with a lot of care. Now that somebody is abroad, the best way I would advise is find somebody you can trust. If somebody you can trust, give them powers of attorney. The powers of attorney you're giving them are to obtain a certificate of title for your land. You are going to name the description of this land and then tell us the boundaries and the size in these powers of attorney, plus the location of where this land is. When you have told us all that, you are going to limit your powers of attorney to only obtaining this certificate of title. Okay? You can say it could be in their names or in your names. All that can be arranged depending on your powers of attorney. If you allow these people to obtain the certificate of title in their names, you shouldn't be worried because it can be arranged, and whatever is written on the title, it can be indicated that this person is simply a donee of powers of attorney of maybe somebody and somebody, and that instrument will be captured as well, that somebody is just a holder of the title, someone who gave them powers of attorney. But the most important thing you have to note is that once somebody has registered this title in their names, pursuant to your powers of attorney or authority, any day you land in Uganda, a transfer can be registered in a minute, in a click of a second. A transfer will be registered and then the land automatically transferred to you. The challenge we usually have is that most of the people who are abroad have lost trust amongst the Ugandans, and as Ugandans who are here, as humans, I think we have morally degenerated. The cost of living is high, and the challenges are many. The temptations definitely come in way too many. So you are going to find challenges of one, who do I give powers of attorney? The best person I would advise, of course, are your relatives, but these have turned out to be the worst people to even trust. A friend of mine usually tells me that family is much overrated, but that's a discussion for another day. Then the other person you can think of giving powers of attorney is actually your lawyer. Get a lawyer friend, trust them with the sole purpose of them obtaining a certificate of title for you. The beauty with a professional and a lawyer is that today in Uganda, we are now encouraging many lawyers to have what we call professional indemnity, such that even when this lawyer messes up, there is an insurance that is going to pay for his reckless dealings. So if you have such a person you have trusted your process with, I am sure even when they mess up, you'll have where to report this lawyer, unlike your relative whom you may have to simply handle in a clan or family meeting. But if it is an advocate and they have messed up with your powers of attorney or your instructions, you are going to have recourse to the law council, or even the law society can help you pull this advocate to order in case they have messed up with your application or any of the instructions. So briefly, that is what I can say about obtaining a certificate of title. The procedures and details, we have gone through them, but they will not be beneficial to somebody who is abroad. The key issues here is that appoint someone in Uganda, give them powers of attorney, and let them run the process on your behalf. When you do that, you are avoiding so many questions of whenever this person goes, who is the owner? Bring us the owner. Prove this. National ID, those, all that. So you are avoiding all that when you give powers of attorney and you are away. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. There is a very important question here in our comment section coming in from Doreen. So Doreen says, "Hi, Fred. I am in a relationship with a man who stays and works in the UK. We bought land in 2022 with his brother, but in one agreement with my husband's name. At the time of separating the plots, they got 8 plots out of the land. We had issues, me and my fiancé. What can I do?"
Thank you very much for the question, and thank you for tuning in. Uh, the facts you give are not sufficient enough for me to advise conclusively on the matter. You talk of a relationship with your man, and then later you're talking of a fiancé. I need to know what kind of relationship this is. If this is a relationship that is legally binding, when we talk of legally binding, we talk of a marriage that is recognized as a marriage under the laws of Uganda. That can also be a discussion for another day. But for starters, are you legally wedded? Two, are you simply customarily married? Or are you actually cohabiting according to the Ugandan law? Now, if you are legally married and you have evidence that you bought land with this person, with your husband and your brother. The most important thing you are going to request for are the agreements. What were the agreements saying? Then secondly, is it titled land? We need all that evidence when you are buying. What actually was your contribution to this? Was it the husband contributing a lot? Was it the brother? Or was it you contributing all the money? Now, once you have noted who was contributing that much, do we have the evidence of this contribution? Do we have the money transfers? When you're transferring money, where are you putting the reason? Because those are some of the mistakes our colleagues living in the diaspora make. You simply transfer money because you trust this friend. You forget to put that narrative of the purpose for which the money is being sent for. And then, of course, the other issue is that some people are laundering money and they don't want to put the purpose or don't want to tag a specific purpose. Sorry to bring this up in this particular question, but I thought that that is part of the evidence we shall need to know before we can advise you on the next course of action. We need to know if your relationship with this gentleman is sanctioned by the law, because if it is sanctioned by law, then different laws are going to apply and different principles are going to apply. You might have to find that you actually own this land in equal shares with your husband if you contributed. Okay, or you might find that actually the three of you are owning this land and it is either joint tenancy or a common tenancy. You remember all those discussions that we've had before concerning this. So I need to know if this relationship with your husband is sanctioned by the law, and also the evidence of who contributed much to this land, what was the intention. So once we have all those, then we can see, are you still living with your fiancé or husband? If you are still living with them, can this be settled amicably, or do we actually need to go to court? Then the other question is, has this land been transferred to other people? If not yet transferred to other people, then that is safe. We can recover this land. If it has been transferred to other people, then we shall have to look into details of were they bona fide purchasers? Did they know that you had contributed to this land? Did they know that you had an interest in this land? But the most immediate remedy you have, since rather if it is registered land, kindly find out and know if it is registered land, then run and lodge a caveat on this piece of land, such that you can argue out or settle amicably all your challenges in future. But when your interest has been protected, if it is titled land and you have lodged a caveat on it, no other transaction will take place. Nobody is going to be able to mortgage this land in court, rather in the bank, or actually lease or sell and transfer to any other person without first notifying you and getting your consent as the caveator. So thank you very much. For that question, I think I will stop at that, given the fact that it really required a lot more details and it seemed out to be personal. You can please follow me. I can follow up with you and still give advice on the question, given that I can be able to access more facts. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. I also have another question coming in from JF Kawoya. So Kawoya says, what is public land categorized as in Uganda?
Thank you very much, JF Kawoya, for the question. Today, when we talk of public land, uh, we are meaning those lands that have been gazetted as public land. There must be a law that is gazetting such a land as public land. Because you're at a village and you have always used this playfield or this pitch by the general public, it doesn't mean that that land actually qualifies to be public land. And now the most interesting bit today is that much of this public land has actually now gone to what we call departments or ministries of governments. That is how we are going to find that some public land is under NEMA as wetlands, or some public land has actually been classified as or gazetted as a road reserve, and it is under the Ministry, I think, of Works and Transport and UNRA. Then that's how you're going to find that other public land is probably under NEMA and it is a forest. So it belongs to the public, but it is managed by the government on trust of the people. So those are the kinds of land. And when you're talking about this, you have to distinguish it from what used to be known as public land because of the 1970 decrees of President Idi Amin. For him and in that regime, all land was government land, and whoever had a lease, rather whoever owned land had to own a lease to be able to own land, whether on public or private land. We never had private land then. I will stop at that briefly, and then we go to the next question.
Thank you, Council. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look at the chart there, I have featured a post which has actually some of the hottest deals from Amity Realtors, our sponsor tonight. Please do go ahead, just click on that link. If you look up after the speakers up there, you'll see a link. Just click on it and see some of the hottest deals they have this week. Never know, maybe you could have a friend or yourself to own one of those properties. Now, Council, it's no longer a secret that land titles and documents disappear from offices, from houses, from many different places where we stay. And now this question is actually asking that, are there banks that secure land titles for safe custody, or I have to use law firms? Your advice, please.
Thank you, Fred, for the question. I have seen it, and it is available in Uganda. Some banks, upon arrangement, they can take your title for safe deposit. I will not speak for which bank or whatever bank because I don't want to be their marketeer, but please walk into any bank and make a request for this. When you're depositing this title, please be sure to note that you do not sign any instrument or that might give power to this bank to mortgage your title. We have had fraudulent dealings where even to lawyers, when depositing a title, because of the wordings of the instrument that you might sign at the deposit, you are not being attentive to the details, and in there, a scrupulous person is going to include a clause that probably gives them powers of attorney to borrow on your title. So that is the risk in it, but the best thing is that it can always be avoided. And even when you have deposited your title with a lawyer or a bank, please periodically check on them. Periodically check on them to see how your title is. Do not deposit and take 10 years, 5 years without actually checking on your title. You can always check on it and return and have it safely deposited. So yes, some banks, not all, take these titles as deposits, but you must be sure that it is not taken as a deposit for security for any mortgage or loan advanced to you. And this can only be avoided by critically looking at the instrument or document you sign while handing over this title to the bank or lawyer. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. I have Barbara on call. Barbara, if you could unmute yourself, just introduce yourself. Go ahead with your comment or question. Hello, Barbara. You're muted.
Hey, sorry, Yugaman. I was getting connectivity issues. Good evening to all of us. Thank you for this space. I would like to ask Council, under what circumstances, if you don't mind breaking each and every one of them down for us, would one's piece of land be caveated? When I come to Amity Realtors, for example, and buy a plot of land, and I would like to be sure it has become mine, what are some of those other things I should look out for? Are there instances where a caveated piece can be on the market and someone picks it up and they still take it up and own it fully? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for tuning in and listening in. You asked quite a lot of questions, but I will stick to the key ones. Under what circumstances can somebody's land be bought? Very rather caveated. There are quite many. And then you ask whether if your land has been caveated, you will need you can actually buy it or somebody buy it. It is possible. But I'll begin with the circumstances. Number one, if land is registered in the names of Barbara and Barbara bought the land from Alan, but Alan never disclosed that before selling the land to Barbara, Alan had not fully paid Fred, the previous owner. Fred can go ahead and caveat the title registered in the names of Barbara because he's claiming an interest. Or if the title is registered in my name, still Fred can caveat it because he has an interest of unpaid balance. And then the other instances, we have a gentleman who asked a question and said his late father died, but government or the district local government has taken over his land. What you're going to do still is, if you are the son of that person who is dead, that is a beneficiary, son or daughter, you also have the power to go and caveat your late father's estate or land that you believe belonged to your late father, as long as you can prove that you are a beneficiary of that estate and at the time of the death this land actually belonged to your father. Then secondly, or rather thirdly, if you have mortgaged your piece of land in the bank and you've been advanced money or a loan, this bank has a right in that mortgage deed to go and lodge a caveat or register a mortgage on your title. That also is a caveat on that title, and that is the circumstance under which it can also be lodged. Also, if you have obtained a court order against a landowner, you can still go ahead and register this court order on that certificate of title. That also is going to be a caveat. But now, there are instances where you're going to find land caveated and somebody proceeds to go ahead and buy the same land. A caveat, they are different in so many ways. And when you have a caveat, it may not necessarily prohibit a lease. It could not be prohibiting a lease, but prohibiting a sale or transfer of land. So if somebody only is interested in creating a lease on this land, then your caveat is not going to count. So the key take home for you here is that when caveating the land, what interest do you have? What exactly are you prohibiting? Because many people think that simply lodging a caveat is enough, but the substance of the caveat matters. Make sure you are prohibiting a transfer, a sale, a lease, a sublease, if that is what you want. Otherwise, if you don't specifically state what you want, your caveat is going to be bypassed by some of these transactions. I think the other caveat that is important and that you need to follow up with is a caveat by a spouse. We have had a question of our colleague who is abroad and has had issues with their fiancé in dealing with land. The first advice I gave them, if you're on chat and you're listening, is go and lodge a caveat because you are a family with this person, and we believe that if they were legally married, then the spouse has interest in this land because they had contribution to it. You can remind me if I've left out any other bit of that question because it was really wide. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Barbara, is there something that Council has not answered before we move on?
Not really. Very much appreciated, Council. Thank you for turning everything up very well.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Barbara, for tuning in. And I shout outs to Council Godlive. We missed you and we still miss you. We hope to have your voice back very soon on this edition of Land Matters. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all. If you have a question, guys, that is pending, or I have not maybe read your DM or it has not yet come through, please do go ahead and make sure that you send it to me. I'll forward it to council. And if you can, just go ahead and put it online. Just use that hashtag up there, Amity Realtors Chats, and you'll get all the responses. Number two, I sometimes get these calls of when you want to get connected to Amity and Council Alan. Most of the times I do send you their handles. So please, if you want any other details and maybe you want to contact them via phone or anything, please do reach out so that you can be able to get the help that you need to sort land matters. This is almost episode 11 of doing these weekly shows. If you want to catch up with our last episodes, please do check out Amity Realtors YouTube channel. You'll get some of the episodes that we've already done. They're very interesting, very educative, and you just never know how much it's going to help you solve the future problems or even currently some of the issues you're facing on your land. So, Council Alan, as we wind up today, your parting shots.
Thank you very much, Fred. As we wind up today, I want to thank you all for always tuning in. Yes, the knowledge is free, but not everybody is ready and willing to harm and acquire it. It is another thing to host a space and you're speaking to yourself, but I am happy that you tune in and listen. Like Fred has advised for reaching out, our handles are available, but it is not guaranteed that when you reach out, we shall take your matter or we shall give you legal services. We shall have to discuss and then consider taking on your matter in case you are really thinking of us being your lawyers. And then as we part of this chat, I would like to ask everyone that take keen interest in reading some of the materials that are out there on the internet. In Uganda, for example, we have a free space that allows even non-lawyers to do some reading. Log on to Yuli, just type in Yuli, ULII. I think it is, I don't know the other, it could be .org or .something. But let me get the proper link here. It is yuli.org. Yes, just log in onto yuli.org. And on here, you are going to find all the laws of Uganda. The website has been improved and it is actually now having a live document. You can read the law with all its amendments, such that if you're going to talk to a lawyer, you have at least some knowledge. I am not saying that when you read this, you do away with the lawyers, but it is going to give you an upper hand, and it is also going to ease the work of your lawyer because you're going to have some idea of what the lawyer is talking about. Instead of you walking to a lawyer's chambers and you're thinking a lawyer is speaking gibberish, take some time off and read some of these materials. They could be detailed in the language, but grasp something. There is always what we call a definition section in the Act. Begin with that, read it. If you can't understand something, then that is when you're now going to go to a lawyer and be like, okay, how do I understand this? Such that you have somewhere you're beginning from. Otherwise, if we don't keep reading, a lot of many laws keep coming up. And like we've said always, lawyers are expensive people. Sometimes you may not be able to afford their fees. But that is a notion that we are breaking as the Uganda Law Society, and we're encouraging many lawyers to spread out all the other regions and go uh, out of Kampala so that they can establish practice elsewhere. So that notion of lawyers being expensive and not being found is dying. Thank you, Fred. I think I'll stop here for tonight and wish you a good night. Thank you.
Fantastic. Before you go off, ladies and gentlemen, allow me read you these contacts, and I'll do it really at a good pace. So these are the contacts of Amity Realtors. I told you they are the guys that have powered us for the last almost 2 years. We're very proud of them. We're very proud of what they are doing and how they are helping communities become better in terms of spreading the knowledge on land matters. When people are knowledgeable, there is less chaos and less fights and all these matters we hear about land. So the first contact is 0777 564 588. 0777 564 588. Or you can get them on 0755 282898. 0755 282898. Thank you for tuning in every single Tuesday. We are so much glad that you always keep coming back and sharing with us. And for those of you that ask the questions, I know some of the guys that ask the questions will be listening into this session later on because they are not in Uganda. But yes, we thank you very much for always sending in your questions and being part of this conversation. Thank you, Council Alan. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Amity Realtors, for always powering this. I'll see you guys again next Tuesday. I see someone has sent a comment, a quick one. Let me just check on this. I think it's okay, cool. I think it was just maybe someone who engaged. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you guys again next Tuesday, same time. We'll announce the topic that we'll be having during the course of the week so we can be able to engage. Please go ahead and DM me. I also want to say this to the Uganda Law Society. And I know we have Council Godlive here and Council Alan. My platform is available. I think that's the biggest contribution that I can ever make to this country, to help people learn different things. My platform is widely available for anyone that wants to engage the community. If you want to teach people different things, please do engage me. We'll create time and we'll help people learn more, because a knowledgeable community is one that is ready to move together to the next step. So I can only do that as maybe an offer to the community as well, and as someone that is always on the digital spaces. So if there is any program, please do reach out to me. I'll give you the space and we talk to the people. Thank you very much. God bless you. I'll see you guys again next Tuesday, same time. Good night.